The killing of Rayshard Brooks, Atlanta police shoot dead unarmed man who fell asleep in his own car. So if you'll recall, this was not too far away from George Floyd, and during the ongoing protests for George Floyd, and there was a great kind of uprising of protests at the same time in Atlanta. And I'm sure that if you don't recall the exact specifics, that you'll soon remember. This was back in June of 2020. So, when it happened back then. Protests have erupted in Atlanta, where the police killing of unarmed African-American man Rayshard Brooks in a Wendy's parking lot has outraged residents. The autopsy revealed that Brooks was shot in the back as he was running away, and the death has been ruled a homicide by the county medical examiner. Brooks's killing comes as protests against racism and police violence continue across the country. The Atlanta police chief has already resigned, and the officer who shot Brooks has been fired. What we saw happen to Mr. Brooks is unfortunately something that we continue to see repeated in our communities all across this country, says Mary Hooks, co-director of Southerners on New Ground, which is part of the National Bailout Collective and the Movement for Black Lives. What we continue to see is police being called in as first responders to things that they should not be showing up for.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So that's Democracy Now!, which always has great summaries. Amy Goodman there. And I'll show you just some of my reporting actually from DC to show you kind of what the vibes were when this happened last summer.
We who believe in justice cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in justice cannot rest, cannot rest. We who believe in justice cannot rest until it comes. Y'all think I got that? Okay, let's go. We who believe in justice cannot rest, cannot rest. We who believe in justice cannot rest until it comes. Y'all got it? We who believe in justice cannot rest, cannot rest. Back. We who believe in justice cannot rest until it comes. One more time. We who believe in freedom cannot rest, cannot rest.
We haven't set a date, but if you continue to come down here, the brother will give you the date and the time and the place where we're going to connect.
So I just wanted to show you guys that span from right after Rayshard Brooks was murdered, because that is what was happening then. And
that was announced during the protests. Is that
every day in DC, that is what is happening, just as it was in LA, just as it was in many cities and places. And my point in showing it is that is what people were fighting for, was for justice for Rayshard Brooks, for George Floyd, shutting down the highway, organizing the bike rides through, the hood, as he said, singing civil rights songs, singing, you didn't see all of it, but they were singing other songs along the way, marching. That stream was almost 3 hours long, and they did that every day. I was there for a long time. I would go back all the time. And that is, there are these little spots of hope. Soon after that, it was announced, I don't remember the exact timeline, that the police officer was fired, and that is a little spot of hope. And there's no true justice, especially because the person is dead. Rayshard was murdered, and there's no justice in that, and it keeps happening, and Black people keep getting murdered. So then to have a decision where that little tiny spot of justice is reversed after people have fought, have marched, have been in the streets, is a real punch in the gut. Garrett Rolfe, former Atlanta officer who fatally shot Rayshard Brooks, was wrongfully terminated, board says. Garrett Rolfe, the former Atlanta police officer charged in the fatal shooting of Rayshard Brooks in a Wendy's parking lot, was wrongly terminated, the Atlanta Civil Service Board has ruled. We are very excited that the Civil Board says that due process matters, Lance LaRusso, attorney for Garrett Rolfe, told CNN in a statement. Imagine being that person. How could you be how could you stomach and live with yourself? He added that Rolfe's reinstatement will likely take some time, but he intended to get his client back to work. The Atlanta Police Department, in a statement, said, "It is important to note that the CSB did not make a determination as to whether Officer Rolfe violated Atlanta Police Department policies. In light of the CSB's rulings, APD will conduct an assessment to determine if additional investigative actions are needed." The APD said the decision merely said the firing process was not done in accordance with the Atlanta City Code. APD said Rolfe will remain on administrative leave until the criminal charges against him are resolved. The mayor's office echoed the APD's statement, saying the firing was reversed because it was not in line with city code and that no determination was made on whether Rolfe violated department policy. Yeah, you got to respect that red tape. Yeah. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, in a statement, said, "Given the volatile state of our city and nation last summer, the decision to terminate this officer after he fatally shot Mr. Brooks in the back was the right thing to do." And I think that's a really bad statement. She's saying, given the volatile state, no, it was simply the right thing to do because it was the right thing to do.
Police officers are not supposed to be executioners. Can we all get that through our thick skulls?
Right, exactly.
They're not there to be the judge and the jury on the street. This is state-sponsored executions, and it's absolutely unacceptable. And again, it doesn't even matter if this person is guilty of a crime or not. That's sort of tangential to the point. They're not executioners.
Yep, they don't get to make that decision. That's not their job.
That's not their job.
And, and think of the right wing being able to point to the statement saying, oh, yeah, this is such a bad statement.
Mm-hmm.
Brooks's death, 2 weeks after the death of George Floyd while in Minneapolis police custody last May, sparked protests across Atlanta, and the city's police chief stepped down less than a day after the shooting. Had immediate action not been taken, I firmly believe that the public safety crisis we experienced during that time would have been significantly worse. She's just digging in. Brooks's family disappointed and confused. L. Chris Stewart, an attorney for Brooks's family, said the decision reflected a procedural error that has no bearing on whether the shooting was justified or not. Mm-hmm. We find it mind-boggling that our elected officials and the former chief weren't aware of the proper procedure to fire an officer, he said. So now it is questions of, was that done to temporarily pacify the protesters and the people around the world that were upset?
And give them a back door to come back? Maybe.
Yeah, right?
That's a fair theory.
It is. Yep. Jeez.
Yeah, how do they not know better? They must. That's like saying they don't know what Miranda rights are.
Yeah. Yep. That's really sketchy. Absolutely.
That's sketchy.
Stewart said members of Brooks's family are disappointed and confused by the board's decision, particularly since the criminal case against the officer has been bogged down in the courts.
Mm-hmm.
It appears that Rayshard Brooks's life didn't really matter and that the world has moved on, said Stewart, adding that Rolfe has received more justice than the Brooks's family. Yeah, that's true. Justin Miller, another attorney for the family, said, "You have a person who is going to stand trial for murder who is now back on the force and able to do the same things he was doing before." The Atlanta Civil Service Board, in an order signed Wednesday, cited a number of issues with what it said was the city's failure to comply with its own code as a reason for overriding the decision to fire Rolfe. In testimony heard in late April, an Atlanta police veteran testified that the dismissal seemed rushed and sufficient time was not provided for the appellant to submit a response. It's, this, if you guys want to read this whole thing, it's in the Wakelet. I just don't. It's expected, unfortunately, that this happened. It's disgusting and horrible, and people can give up, like we keep saying this week.
Right.
But it's disheartening. It's really, really disheartening.
It is.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.